back with another video, 2 days in a row. I'm not going to become a daily YouTube uploader person at this point, but I'm bored and I had some thoughts I wanted to share, but didn't really want to write an article, and now I can do this, so here we are. I wanted to talk about Trials of Osiris, which is obviously not the most relevant activity this season, if people even remember it exists, and well, that's kind of the issue, isn't it? I mean, the fact that Trials is such a non-factor in the current state of the game, and I wanted to talk about why that is and what my experience has been like with the changes they made this season that were supposed to benefit average players like me, and what both the lower skill and higher skill end of the spectrum look like. And Evie is making a cameo. I thought she might come up here when she heard me talking. Hello, Evie. You're a big favorite on the YouTube channel. Anyway, in terms of kind of where I'm at with PvP, I would say I'm like an average, slightly above average PvP player, depending on the situation. I'm going to be running some PvP gameplay that I painstakingly try to record myself not totally screwing up, and I think it's a pretty representative game of like me at PvP. It's just normal sixes. I think I'm second on my team, and I have above a 1 KDA, which is about all I can really hope for. And I make some bad plays, as you'll see, but you know, I'm okay. I'm not usually totally dragging my team down in normal modes. I do get wiped in trials all the time, so I am definitely on the low end of the spectrum there, and I used to struggle getting 3 wins every week so I could at least claim the engram and turn in my tokens. Right now, the changes made to Trials are a combination of they haven't really fixed things for the higher skill players in terms of kind of loot rewards, but also cheaters. I have not heard anything about cheating getting better, and if anything, I have heard about different top tier PvP players leaving Trials altogether because they don't enjoy it, either running into cheaters or account recovs or whatever. And then lower skill players, which were supposed to benefit from some of these changes, don't really benefit. I don't actually think it's much better. The major change that was made to kind of appease people like me, so I'm not wasting my time, losing a bazillion games and leave with no loot, is that you can fail your way to an engram, whatever the 3-win thing is for the week. So I think the week I did it, it was arms or something, and I didn't have arms, so I got 1 arms drop from that. And then after that, you can turn in your tokens, and you can still get to 3, 5, 7 wins, whatever, but it's a bounty where it's very easy to complete. I thought it was going to take a while, like if I was not, winning a lot of games, but it's based on rounds, so even if you can win a couple of rounds, I don't think it took more than 4 or 5 games, and that week I ended up getting 3 wins anyway. The problem is like, yeah, it was nice to get the kind of pity drop. It's kind of a free gimme with how easy that bounty is, which is weird, but they took away, so they halved tokens for wins, and they took away tokens for losses completely. And I think the point of that was to try and avoid people token farming at early levels, where they would just kind of reset their card and farm the easy first matches on the card and amass a bunch of tokens for turn-ins. The problem is that everybody ends up with less tokens. I used to end up with 60, 80 tokens, 100 tokens if I was playing Trials all weekend, and then if I hit that third drop, I could turn them all in. Playing this close to the same amount, I think I had maybe like 20, 30 tokens total, and that's most of those came from bounties, because losing those tokens on losses like truly makes you feel like you have literally accomplished nothing. And like the matchmaking has not changed. Like token farming, I think, was more of a conspiracy theory than something that was like actively happening and making matchmaking for Trials worse, because the loot pool is full. Like no one is going for like limited drops at the early end of the card anymore. Like I don't think token farming is happening, and yet matchmaking is still as bad as it ever was, and I'm going up against flawless teams left and right, after just a win or two, or even worse, like a couple of losses. I still think that the card is just matching you based on how many total games that you've played, rather than whatever your card says. I just don't believe that's how card-based matchmaking works. So if you're like 1-4, you could be going, or 1-3, you could be going up against someone that's 4-0, like, and that it considers that even. So that hasn't changed, and that actually made it worse. And I am less likely to go for, trials weekends now, other than maybe playing just a tiny amount of games to get that one drop and then move on. But I'm overall probably ending up with less loot than I did under the old system because of how tokens work now. The other problem with Trials is loot and loot relevance, in that there is not any, really. Right now, there are just too many other activities in the game that give out better loot than Trials more consistently. There are many sources of high stat armor now. I'm like, I can even get, high stat armor in prime engrams now, or like there's Iron Banner or the dungeon, or whatever. You can even farm high stat umbral armor rolls now if you want. So the armor is pointless. The weapons are also outclassed by almost everything. The summoner is probably the best weapon in Trials, but even that is not as good as Gnawing Hunger, which is a weapon you can get from the vendor at this point, or just random world drops, or you can farm it specifically from umbral engrams. So it's much easier to get a god roll, and there are more good god rolls of that gun than there are of summoner. Astral Horizon is fine, but it's not as good as Fellwinter's, which is what everybody has, or you can just get a Dust Rock or whatever. Pesset, I don't even know. No one really likes Eye of Soul. Rocket launchers are pointless. I don't think I've ever seen a single human use the fusion rifle. So the point is there's no real loot. And the other issue is when is this changing? We are not going to see any new Trials loot, armor or weapons, until I believe season 13, which is the season after the upcoming expansion. So we will be stuck with the same Trials gear and the same lack of motivation, essentially, by default, for 3 total seasons. So last season, this season, and then the next season, where with all the other stuff going on, Trials will probably be even less relevant. And it won't change until season 13. And we don't know how it'll change, if it'll just be a new armor set, or if that's when Bungie will finally roll out things like adept weapons as a motivator for going flawless, but that's not a guarantee. So the point is we're going to have about, like, after we knew Trials was kind of in rough shape after the first season, still 6 more months of Trials probably continuing to be in the exact same rough shape it is now, and people just playing it, I guess, for fun, if you have fun with it, but there's no real loot or prestige motivation for it anymore. And I've had a much better time with Iron Banner, in that it's a power enabled, it's the same kind of thing, so you want to get your power up for that a little bit, but it's much easier to jump in and play. Like, there's no card system. It's just, you're going to get stopped sometimes, but you're also going to have good streaks. We actually got new loot in Iron Banner this time, 2 weapons that were worth chasing, and I've already ranted about how hard it is to farm specific weapons in Iron Banner, which is terrible, but besides that, it's a much more rewarding experience. Where this is all leading is how do you fix Trials? And there's no clear answer to that, because one part of me is like, what if this whole system is just not good and has never been good, and Destiny would be better off with something like a ranked ladder that rotates every season or something, and that was the competitive PvP. If we are going to stay with this system, I guess maybe that if they make enough like adept weapons, or they do some adept armor mods or something that are trial specific, that are worth pursuing and really prestigious, that could be something that turns things around. That's something they've talked about doing already. We just don't know when that's going to come or what that'll look like. On the crappy player end, I maintain, and I will say this a million times, the way to increase Trials population and get more people playing at lower skill levels and allowing them to feel like they have a chance is matchmaking. Iron Banner has matchmaking. It can create games and teams that are disasters, but it can also make you have fun. Trials population is low because nobody wants to LFG for Trials. And if they do have friends that have played it, a lot of them have given up. If you do LFG, you keep running into groups that are checking your Crucible KDA before you can join up, and it's very hard to just jump into Trials. And I think it can learn a lot from the comp playlist with the solo queue there. That is something that dramatically improved that mode and allowed for a lot more people to play it, to get a lot further in placement, and it really improved that mode. Things would be a little tricky here with Trials and the card system, given that you'd have to kind of pick whether you're stuck with a team for that card run, or you can have different matches every time and everyone has their individual cards. it's tricky. I won't dispute that, and yet I feel like that is something that needs to be in place. And unlike raids, like everyone's like, oh, well, raids are pinnacle activities and don't have matchmaking. Trials is PvP. I understand that you will be at an advantage if you are at a team that you're communicating with and doing callouts and stuff, but there's no complicated raid mechanics that you literally cannot explain if you're on, like, you know, if you're not in voice chat or something. So I don't think it's the same category as raid matchmaking, which is a whole separate debate, just because it's a pinnacle activity. I think that is not a reason to disqualify the idea, but every time I say this, I get a ton of pushback. So I'm gonna expect all the thumbs down here now that I'm bringing that view to YouTube rather than just people yelling at me on Twitter, which is what normally happens, or in the comments of podcasts. All that said, I'm probably not going to play Trials hardly at all for the rest of the season. I got other stuff to do. Well, I got to get my 7 wins for the Triumph, I guess, which people are already like complaining about, but I don't really have a problem with that Triumph. I think it's fine. It's going to be hard for a lot of people, but 7 total wins, like not in a row, is not that bad. So it's going to take a long time for Trials to get fixed. I don't know when that is actually going to happen. Season 13 seems like the first time it can start to even happen, and I would be surprised to see kind of any amount of effort devoted to Trials loot or significant Trials changes before then, but I guess we'll see. Let me know your own thoughts about the state of Trials in the comments, if you're playing it at all, what you make of it. Again, I'm not going to do a lot of PvP talk here, because as you probably saw from that game, not really my thing, but I'll play it when I have to, and I can have a good time with it sometimes. But Trials has always kind of been a thorn in my side since it's been introduced, and I somehow like it less this season, even though the changes were supposed to benefit me, and I'm playing it less. But all right, that's it for that video. Probably not going to do one tomorrow, because I don't want to get addicted to doing a video a day, because frankly I don't have time, but I want to post as often as I can, so when I have a moment, here I am. So yep, like, comment, subscribe. Sleeping on the floor, you can't see her, but she said hi at the beginning, and I'll try to have her guest star as often as I can. All right, see ya.